I never intended to explore the hollow, not really. It was one of those things that lurked on the edges of my awareness, whispered about in online forums, mentioned in passing by people who swore they'd been close enough to see the shadows move. But curiosity has a way of digging its claws deep, and when I found myself with a weekend free in early autumn, I figured, why not? I drove north out of the city, the streets thinning into winding country roads, the sun already low behind a veil of clouded orange. Maps said I was heading to Hollow Creek, a place so obscure it barely registered on GPS. The locals were even more evasive. "Don't go past the old bridge," one gas station attendant warned me, voice dropping like a stone into a well. "You won't like what's out there after dark." I smiled politely, thanked him, and kept driving. I wasn't alone. Marin came with me. She's the type who thrives on this sort of reckless curiosity, the kind who finds joy in hiking miles into the woods just to sit by a river at twilight. I liked her because she never laughed at my anxiety. It just became fuel for her daring. She packed the Jeep with sleeping bags, tents, a small cooler, and enough flashlights to power a small village. I, on the other hand, brought nothing but a camera, a notebook, and a sense of creeping dread I tried to hide behind casual conversation. The road narrowed after the town's last gas station. The asphalt ended abruptly, leaving a ribbon of gravel flanked by thick woods. The trees arched overhead like cathedral ribs, their limbs twisting in shapes that suggested silent watchers. We drove slowly, headlights cutting narrow paths through the encroaching darkness. Every mile was punctuated by the occasional rustle in the underbrush, the snap of a twig that made me jerk reflexively, my hand tightening on the wheel. "You okay?" Marin's voice floated over from the passenger seat. She wasn't even pretending to be tense. "I'm fine," I lied. My stomach knotted in response to a shadow that darted between the trees, too quick to identify. We reached the bridge just as the sun disappeared completely, leaving only the gray wash of twilight. The river beneath was a black streak, the banks choked with weeds and fallen trees. Beyond the bridge, the path became a track barely wide enough for the Jeep. Signs of human activity dwindled. Abandoned cabins, rusted farm implements half swallowed by the earth, tire tracks that seemed older than memory. We stopped the Jeep near a clearing Marin had identified on the map. Hollow Creek itself was just a trickle this time of year, but the forest around it breathed an almost sentient cold. We set up camp quickly, tossing sleeping bags into the small tent and clearing a fire ring from loose stones. Marin unpacked the cooler while I attempted to build a fire. The first spark barely caught, and the dry leaves I gathered whispered ominously under my feet as if they had their own life. "Didn't bring the marshmallows?" I joked, but it fell flat in the crisp evening air. "Don't need marshmallows when the hollow's hungry," she said, her tone light, but her eyes scanned the trees. I frowned. Hollow. The name alone sounded like it belonged in old ghost stories. But that's what drew me in. As night fell, the forest grew quieter. Birds had retreated, insects seemed to hush their chorus, and the usual creak of the trees turned into an almost oppressive silence. My fire sputtered against the damp air, struggling to maintain a warm glow. Shadows from the flames flickered across the forest floor, casting strange forms in every direction. I tried to laugh, tried to convince myself it was nothing more than imagination. Marin stoked the coals with practiced hands, her silhouette calm and deliberate in the orange glow. It began slowly, at first just a whisper of movement. A sound from the woods, subtle, rhythmic, like breathing. Not wind, not animal. Something deliberate, aware of us. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice low, almost too quiet to be heard over the fire. Marin tilted her head, listening. "Probably just the river," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Her eyes were scanning the edge of the tree line now, every branch and shadow igniting a trace of fear I tried to suppress. Then the sound changed. It wasn't a whisper anymore. It was a dragging noise, wet and resonant, as if something large and heavy was moving through the underbrush. My heart thudded painfully. "Maybe a deer?" I suggested. "Or a bear?" Marin didn't answer. She was frozen, eyes fixed on a dark shape beyond the firelight. The shadows moved. Not just any shadows. These were too purposeful, elongated, almost humanoid. 3 figures, perhaps, but I couldn't be sure in the dim light. They weren't running, they weren't walking. They were gliding, impossibly fast and unnaturally silent. I could feel the heat of panic rising. My instincts screamed to grab Marin and run, but my body was slow, weighed down by disbelief. The figures reached the edge of the clearing, just beyond the firelight. I could see them now. Their skin was pale, stretched tight over angles that shouldn't exist. Limbs were elongated, twisted in ways that made my stomach churn. Their heads were too large for their thin necks, eyes milky white and unblinking. Marin gasped. The sound cut through the night like a flare. One of the figures jerked its head, a twitching, jerky motion that seemed both animal and wrong. It wasn't looking at us, yet it sensed us. "Run," I whispered, grabbing her hand. We scrambled toward the jeep, tripping over roots, tearing clothes on briars. The creatures followed, too fast, too precise. Behind us, the underbrush erupted with high-pitched screeches that sounded like laughter and sobbing combined. I dared a glance back. There were more than 3 now, emerging from the forest, gliding into the clearing like predators from some other world. Marin slammed the jeep door as I fumbled with the keys. We fired it up and ripped down the track, gravel spraying into the air. In the rearview mirror, I saw them, standing at the edge of the trees, watching, unblinking, countless. We didn't speak for miles, the engine's roar masking our breaths. My mind raced, trying to rationalize, to categorize what we'd seen. But Hollow Creek was no ordinary forest. It wasn't just the terrain, the abandoned structures, or the isolation. It was alive with something ancient, something that fed on noise, on firelight, on presence. By the time we reached the main road, the forest behind us was silent again, just the faint rustle of leaves in the wind. It was as though nothing had happened, but I knew better. That night, I didn't sleep. The memory of those creatures, their elongated limbs and blind, seeking eyes, haunted every flicker of shadow in my tent. And when I returned home, I checked maps online, cross-referencing Hollow Creek with unsolved disappearances in the county. Clusters of missing people, dates aligned, times that coincided with summer barbecues and outdoor gatherings. Almost ritualistic. The Hollow wasn't just a place, it was a trap. And somehow, unknowingly, we had awakened it.